Hello, I'm Kodi Cherry. Fertility figures and Venus statues have been a part of art for as long as humans have been on this earth. Art historians, after finding these figures, have come to the assumption that these figures were created as a means to accentuate the features that people at the time valued in women. Of the features visible in these figures, what can we assume were the features desired in women from these cultures and time periods? That is what we will be discussing today. Fertility and Venus figures are sculptures of women that were found throughout the late Stone Age and onward. Of this type of figure, there's believed to be about three types. The first type, called the Universal Mother, is usually viewed as a goddess. There are also about three types of this specific type of figure. The first is a woman with large breasts and thighs. The second often depicts a mother, holding, breastfeeding, or presenting her child. The third type of Universal Mother is a pregnant woman. The second type of fertility figure is called the Divine Woman. This type of figure often depicts a woman, sometimes clothed and sometimes nude. The woman will usually have normal, non-exaggerated features and appeal to common beauty standards at the time. The third and final type of fertility figure is called the personified yoni. This type often does not bring attention to a woman's form and simply shows her primary sexual organs only. Of the three types of fertility figures I have discussed, most would go under the name of Venus. But what makes a fertility figure a Venus? In order to understand this, we must first understand what the term Venus meant. In mythology, specifically Greek mythology, Venus was known as the goddess of beauty, sex, fertility, and love. Knowing this, we can say that two of the three figures discussed are Venus figures, those being the Universal Mother and the Divine Woman. Going by this line of logic, we can assume that at least a portion of fertility figures were viewed as goddesses in their time. For the figure on screen, titled the Venus of Willendorf, it was most likely viewed as a sort of goddess of fertility, evidenced by the design of her body. This statuette was found in 1908 in Willendorf, Austria. This figure can be assumed to be one of the Divine Mother types, specifically the type that depicts a pregnant woman. This figure, created 25,000 to 30,000 years ago, was made using limestone and was carved into using other stones. It depicts a woman with large breasts and thighs and a sizably large stomach, as though she was pregnant. Along with this, she appears to wear some sort of headdress that covers the entirety of her face. Based on these factors, we can reason that during the time this was made, women have been viewed more for their fertility and less for their individual features. But what else can we view in this piece? Well, how about we look at it through the elements and principles of art? The color in this piece, due to being made using limestone, takes on a sort of orangish yellow hue. The lines in this figure seem to have mainly been used to show the creases in the woman's body. There appears to only be about 2 instances of geometric shape in this work, the rest of the shapes being organic shapes. The first geometric shape I notice is the many spheres attached to the woman's headdress. The second shape visible is the sort of triangular shape visible where the woman's female reproductive organs are. The piece seems to primarily take on the texture of the limestone itself, while also taking on a second, more bumpy texture of the headdress. Due to this piece being a sculpture, it takes on a 3D form. Finally, there's only about one form of repetition in this piece, that being the raised, spherical bumps on the headdress, going in several rows around her head. So, if that is the case for pieces made during Paleolithic times, what is the case for pieces made during later times, such as ancient Greece? That is what we will be discussing right now. Now we shall discuss Venus figures from the period of ancient Greece. During this period, Venus figures were commonly created. However, they often took a very different form from the figures shown previously. These figures, created to show the female body in all its detail, did not often exaggerate the features of the women, instead simply showing how women often looked. The figures of these women often depict them as either nude or with a thin cloth covering their body. They would also often be posed in certain ways, arms positioned in different ways, heads turned, and bodies bent. This was different from figures in the past, which were often depicted as completely nude with no cloth, and in very simplistic poses. This is shown in the piece on screen, titled The Venus de Milo. This statue, found in 1820, was recovered from the remains of a theater. It had laid beneath the debris for about 2,000 years, only being damaged slightly, losing her arms and having a few slight scrapes along her form. And despite all this, she still shows the amazing and impressive craftsmanship of her artist, Alexandros of Antioch. This figure depicts a woman, nude from the waist up, with a sort of cloth tied around her waist and covering her genitals. Along with this, her hair is braided and tied back behind her head. This is very different from the Venus of Willendorf, which bore no cloth to cover herself. Along with this, the Venus de Milo does not appear to exaggerate her features, and gives a clear view of her face, unlike the Venus of Willendorf. Another key difference between the Venus de Milo and the Venus of Willendorf is the specific type of fertility figure that they are. While they can both be considered Venuses, the Venus de Milo would be considered the Divine Woman type, while the Venus of Willendorf would be considered as the Universal Mother type. With these key differences taken into consideration, we can assume that, in the two cultures and time periods, the way women were viewed changed drastically. Whereas in Paleolithic era Austria, women were viewed more for their fertility, in ancient Greece, women were viewed more for their individual beauty, without the need to exaggerate their features. Now that we have discussed this, we can now discuss the elements of the Venus de Milo. This piece has several examples of line in it, most of it being used to show the lines in the woman's skin, as well as her hair and the wrinkles in her cloth. The shapes in this work seem to mostly be organic, with very few to no geometric shapes. There are many textures visible in this work, the first being the texture of the marble itself. The other viewable textures are the skin and hair of the woman, as well as a cloth tied around her. The form of this piece would be 3D, due to it being a sculpture. There is only about one form of repetition in this piece, that being the rows of wavy lines used to show her hair. Finally, this figure achieves balance by having the woman posed in a very simple position. And that is all. Thank you for going on this journey and learning about these figures with me, and have a beautiful day.